$4.15, 50 miles an hour. Whoa, windy. It hovers around $4 a gallon pretty much around here.
If you're buying your gas from Larry's Liquid Gold, you may be a redneck.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Oh, what is today? Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. This is a precursor to the video coming up on the fuel. Kind of hard to see these cars because they come flying up over this hill. There we go. And this is a 55 mile an hour zone, so you got to really get on it. And with this scooter, I'm up to 40, 45. It's got a pretty good pickup, but this is a hill too, so yeah, I'm keeping up with traffic. 50 degrees, 50 miles an hour. Whoa, windy. Oh, let's see what we got. So unleaded is $4.15. It's kind of hard to see. Premium is $4.75, and then diesel is $5.25. It hovers around $4 a gallon pretty much around here. Before I left the house, what the average gas prices are, and Ohio is probably ranked about nationally the top 15. So here in the Midwest in Ohio, we got pretty decent gas prices compared to some of the other places in the country. Like California is the worst. California, for both gasoline and diesel, is the highest. It's always high out in California. Georgia, I think, was the least expensive. Anyway, I did not talk about diesel in the video, so I'll mention it a little bit here. It's its own topic, but really you can research how diesel engines work just differently than gas engines because there's no spark plug. Diesel engines run still a 4-stroke, just like a regular gasoline 4-stroke engine. The difference with diesel is there's no spark plug, and the compression, intakes the air, and then you got the compression, and then on that downward force is where you have the downstroke, and it ignites from just heat and gas. The diesel has the elements in it where when that compression happens and it mixes with the air, it ignites and it forces that cylinder down, and that's called your power stroke. I wasn't going to go into great detail with diesel because it's a pretty, there's one, I don't think there's different grades of diesel. It's just one type of fuel, so it's a little easier. And diesel is more, it just has more energy to it, the fuel itself, the diesel process. So that's why diesel engines are great for people that are hauling, a lot of work trucks and like people that haul things and pull things and campers and stuff, because diesel is great for the heavy duty hauling and it's just got more power. But we've all seen those diesel trucks. We've been behind them, the ones that have the lift kits on them with the big obnoxious tailpipes and the big giant exhaust pipes behind their cab, and man, they're just stomping on the gas and they're billowing that black soot all over people, and they think it's funny. And the reason for the black smoke is it's actually because the engine is not running as efficient as it should be, because when the engine is running efficiently, you shouldn't have hardly any smoke. So they do that stuff on purpose. And I've been in forums where, these young kids will ask the question, how do I get my truck to billow that black smoke on people? Well, you just put a dirty air filter in it, or you can do some other things to the engine. And really, the only thing you're doing is you're not allowing your engine to run efficiently, so it's struggling to produce the right emission, and that's where you get the soot. But like I said, there's some people out there that think that's fun and cool, and we've all been behind those trucks, haven't we?
So you may have noticed the question I posted on the community tab under my channel. I'm asking a question about fuel. Should I really go down that rabbit hole? I mean, after all, there's been tons of videos already on the topic, but I figured I want to learn more. So when I learn, I like to pass the information along. Even though you guys might know most of this stuff, I feel that I have gained a little bit of knowledge by, I researched probably 20 different videos on the topic of fuel. And I sometimes wonder, should I just reinvent the wheel and keep like reproducing stuff that's already out there? But I like to add my little twist to it, because along the way I pick up things that I might have questions on where the presenter doesn't answer that. So it's always good to have more content, even if the subject's been done and overdone quite a bit. So I'm sitting in a park right now. You may hear some crows and birds. It's awful quiet right now, so this is nice. I like to come up here. I don't have my studio at home quite done yet, so this is a nice backdrop and quiet. So anyway, let's get on to it. I read some of your comments under the community tab, and when I give this material here, you have to ask yourself why you chose those different types of fuel, because I'm going to have questions too. I pretty much wrote my script for the video before I read the comments under the community tab, and then I got to thinking like, oh my goodness, I wonder why they're doing that. So this might be a helpful video. And look, I only present what I come to know. I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. I learn like you guys learn, but it's kind of cool because when the teacher becomes the student, we learn, if that makes sense. So when I present this material, in a way, I'm learning as I go, and I enjoy it, I really do, and it gets me thinking, and it gets you guys thinking, and hopefully we can find the right solutions for the motorbikes, the vehicles, whatever we drive. So some of the responses were surprising. When I asked the question, a lot of them were probably what I would do, fueling up my ADV 150, my lawn equipment, my vehicles. But there were some that I'm interested why you chose what you did, because when I look at the videos out there and I study, videos like Scotty Kilmer, who some of you might know, very old school mechanic, when he presents his material, it just makes sense and it's logical. So I don't know why I have trouble using the higher fuel grades. And what are those higher fuel grades? Well, the numbers at the pump, you see 87, 89, 93, and that's in America. European countries, they have a different rating system, but what I think I understand is the ratios are similar. The numbers are just, the measurements are different. The numbers, in other words. America uses a PON, which is the pump octane number, PON. So in your manual, like in my Honda ADV 150 manual, it calls for 86 PON or higher. So I've been using 87 in practically everything I've ever owned for a long time, over a half a century on this planet. I've never had issues with any engine, and that's 87. Now, granted, today and age, the new modern vehicles, or if you have a high performance vehicle or a race car, yeah, they require the higher octane fuel because just the nature of that engineering in the engine. So getting back to the numbers, the 87, 89, 93 that you see on most American pumps, or also called regular, mid-grade, or premium. Like I said, in other countries, the numbers vary and they're a little higher, but they basically mean the same ratios. So with an 87 octane, the fuel ignites with the least amount of compression. So that's why in smaller engines and older engines, anything that's not a high performance vehicle, the lower octane fuels are perfectly fine because the compression, that cylinder and the compression, it doesn't need to be ignited as quickly. The 93 octane, why would you use that? Well, the 93 octane is designed for higher compression engines, because if you have a higher compression engine, you need that combustion to act sooner. And basically what happens is, if I understand it correctly, and I'm not a mechanic by all means, but with a 93 octane, that fuel will ignite with more compression, which increases the pressure in the cylinders to produce the power. So cool, will my motorbike or my scooter or my regular engine have more power if I use 93 octane? Well, that seems the biggest misconception out there, because the octane numbers don't really equal power. The power comes from the power plant, which is your engine. So you have to understand the engine and how engines work. Like, for instance, most smaller motorbike engines, they're not really designed to run the very high octane because their compression levels aren't as great. So again, a higher octane fuel does not necessarily equal more power. That comes from somewhere else. That comes from the engineering of the engine and the performance of the engine. So I'm thinking, if I use a higher octane fuel and let's say my motorbike, why am I spending the extra money, right? Because it's not going to give me, in theory, any more power. So what does the higher octane fuels do? Because the numbers represent like volatility of compression, volatility levels, I should say. Now, the higher octane fuels, you have heard that people say, well, I use higher octane fuels because I find sometimes my engine knocking happens when fuel burns unevenly in the cylinders, and it causes a term called detonation, or sometimes you'll hear mechanics say thermal shock. So if you have an engine that is knocking, you may have a fuel problem because maybe the engine you're using, there's something going on with the fuel mixture or the compression. So you can try a higher level octane, maybe an 89, to see if that helps, even going up to 93. It's not going to really harm anything, not going to blow up your engine or anything, but you can see if that helps with the compression. But you may have other things going on too. Using a higher octane fuel is not always a foolproof way to resolve knocking problems. There's a lot of other things that cause knocking, I understand. So you have to I think the biggest question I ask myself, because I've thought of it too, I'm one of these people that go to the pump and I'm like, the 93 must be better, right, than the 87. It's got to be better fuel. So what we have to do is we have to dissect what's in that fuel, why, and what the octane levels represent. So again, the numbers represent volatility. That's about it. Volatility and compression level. Are they going to make my car faster or more powerful? Like I touched earlier, that comes from the engine, not the gas. So like if you have a race car or an engine that's more high performance vehicle that in the owner's manual that calls for more of a premium grade like 89, 93, and you run 87 octane in it, what's going to happen? Well, the worst thing that'll happen is you might just cause some knocking because you're going to get that detonation where if the mixture of the fuel isn't right for the compression, you might get some knocking going on. So I would highly suggest going by your owner's manual and just sticking to the octane level owner's manual represents. And then I've read arguments where people say, well, your higher octane fuels help clean your engine better. But here's what I've learned. Any of your top tier, they call them top tier retailers that sell gasoline, like Speedway, Marathon, the well-known brands, they already have the cleaning agents in them. And they're standards within the industry. So these cleaning agents, they call them detergents. They've been around since 2004. So most of your major retailers already have that in your gasoline. So again, why are you using the higher octane fuel? And I usually get my fuel at Speedway. Speedway is one of the top tier retailers for gasoline. But again, there are many others. So again, the question of the day, and by reading some of your comments, I'm wondering, why do you feel that using 91 or 93 in a motor that from the owner's manual doesn't really require that? What do you feel is the benefit? I'd really like to know, because this is going to be an ongoing discussion, I can tell right away, because I'm learning as you guys are learning. And maybe there's some mechanics out there that know more than some of the videos I've been watching to make this video. And again, it's okay to recycle information. I mean, it's done all over the world every day. So I thought when I was researching these videos, some of these videos on fuels are very good. They did an excellent job. But I'm not trying to compete with those videos. I'm trying to give my own views of the videos, and I'm gonna hopefully get the feedback from my subscribers and in the comments section under the community tab. And we'll have this discussion and we'll learn more together. One more thing I wanted to add is most of the modern vehicles today, because they're all computerized, they have these onboard computers and controllers that can monitor the amount of fuel and the compression and all these things, and they can run on, your engine's going to run on 87, 93. The engine's not going to have a problem with it initially. And what's it going to do to it later down the road? That's the question. So because the engine have these electronic controls that can adjust the performance, even when using a lower octane fuel, you probably won't notice a difference. So you have to ask yourself, am I just spending more money than I should on a higher octane? Why do I feel that I should use a higher octane? And what is actually in a higher octane fuel? And from everything I've read, the only difference is the ratio where the compression levels change or how the fuel ignites. So if you feel that your 93 fuel is allowing your engine to run smoother and it feels better and it's quieter, hey, I'm all for that. I mean, I don't think it's going to really hurt things from what I read and from what I watched. It's not going to be a negative thing. Then there is this topic called ethanol. Ethanol is different. Ethanol is a game changer to the fuel industry. From what I read, I learned a lot about ethanol actually prepping for this video. So ethanol is actually ethyl alcohol. Basically the same thing you find in moonshine. Although don't drink it because they do put things in the ethanol to make it undrinkable. So do not drink your ethanol. But ethanol is basically made in a similar fashion as moonshine. It's made either from corn, which is the big one, sugarcane, and countries like Brazil. Ethanol is used very widely over there because their vehicles and their engines are designed and manufactured to handle ethanol better than a lot of the vehicles in the United States. We call them flex fuel vehicles. So I've seen trucks out there, flex fuel. What does that mean? Flex fuel is an engine that can handle regular gasoline and ethanol mix. And sometimes E85 is 85% ethanol, 15% regular gasoline. And some of these flex fuel vehicles can handle that. Is ethanol better? Well, that's where the political debates start coming in. But first, let me go back to, before I start talking about ethanol, let me take a step back. I wanted to mention that if you do buy your fuel, make sure you buy it from top tier retailer, meaning a well-known brand like your Marathons, your Speedways. If you're buying your gas from Larry's Liquid Gold, you may be a redneck. So yeah, buy your fuel from a reputable source. You've all seen those fueling stations that are on the corners and just kind of, where there's one or two cars parked there, and you don't know where they get their fuel. And they're definitely not probably buying their fuel and going by the standards. They're probably using the bare minimum because there's laws on this stuff, guys. I mean, yeah, any fuel you buy is going to work in your vehicle, but is it the best for your vehicle? Probably not. So stick to the major brands and do what your owner's manual states, and you'll be fine. Again, I'm 54 years old. I've had many bikes and vehicles and trucks and cars and lawn equipment. Have I ever had an issue? No, I have not had issues because I've always stuck with what my owner's manual called for. In the topic of ethanol, you can go down that rabbit hole if you really want to, but I'm not going to because I don't want to make this a 4-hour video. This is going to be short and sweet, and we're just going to explain what that ethanol means because I learned a lot from actually, like I said, researching this video. On the political side of ethanol, the ethanol supporters are saying that the big oil industry, powerful oil industries, do not want ethanol to become mainstream because it's all about this, right? Just like anything else is in the world. So your ethanol supporters, a lot of farmers, a lot of people that are in the part of the country that produce the ethanol, a lot of cornfields and stuff, they're all for it. And I can understand why. If it's better for the planet, if it's better for our environment, and if we can wean ourselves off using oils and dependency on oil, hey, I'm all for that too. You have to know what ethanol can do to an engine also. Actually, I don't know if you know this, but ethanol is actually added to gasoline already. It's about 10% ethanol in most gas today. And they use ethanol as an octane booster. It also oxygenates the fuel. It absorbs water. It's mixed with petroleum that is designed for specific engines called flex fuel, like I mentioned earlier. And it's more for high performance engines because it burns cleaner. Those all sound like pretty positive things that come out of ethanol, right? So why wouldn't I want to use ethanol? Well, again, is your engine capable of handling ethanol? Like I said, E85 is probably the most popular ethanol number that you might see out there. It's 85% ethanol, 15% gas. And of course, that depends on the country. That's mainly in the US. But the only thing that I'm reading that I'm concerned about with ethanol is what they call carbon buildup. I did go down the rabbit hole. I got onto a forum, and there was a bunch of mechanics from Brazil that their daily job is working on engines and tearing apart engines and, in the mechanical, because in Brazil, they use pretty much nothing but ethanol, right? The one gripe that they had was the ethanol, they're destroying the engines because of carbon buildup. So I didn't get into the science of why ethanol is building up carbon in engines. I'm guessing because, although it has benefits for certain things, it also lowers fuel economy because it contains less energy. But then others say that filling up with ethanol really boosts performance. So you have all these pros and cons about things. And the only con that I see with ethanol from what I read was the carbon buildup and the loss of fuel economy. Now, what happens if you accidentally put ethanol in an engine that's not a flex fuel engine? Let's say it's just in a normal car and you've had a long night and you mistakenly fill your car up with ethanol. If you do accidentally use ethanol, the worst thing that I read that can happen is, yeah, your check engine light might come on because your control system is having trouble trying to figure out that compression and that mixture for fuel, air, and all that stuff. So you might have the check engine light come on, but it's not going to destroy your engine or anything. Okay, don't panic. Your wheels aren't going to fall off. What you can do is, if you mistakenly use ethanol and you're having some weird issues with your car, next time just fill up with the normal gas you're used to and let that dilute that ethanol out of there, and eventually it'll go away. But worst case, you just get your check engine light reset, and you can do that at like a Pet Boys, or anybody will reset your check engine light. And some of you out there might have the car code reader, the readers for card codes, and I think you can reset those too from that, I'm pretty sure. Again, I'm not a mechanic, so forgive me. And ethanol, even though it's a new term to me and a new term to a lot of people out there, it's not new. It's been around, I think, from 1826 all the way back then. And I can't forget the Model T Ford, where yes, the Model T Ford could run on pure ethanol, pure gasoline, or a mixture of both. Isn't that pretty cool? I mean, that was a long time ago. That technology was around. I don't know, I don't play around with different fuel types and octane types because, again, I've never had a problem. And my engines run fine. If I were to give advice, and this is really not an advice channel, this is just me sharing what I learn, no matter if it's an accessory, gear, review. But if it were me, I would just stick to what my owner manual says for the gasoline and just leave it at that. And if you have a reason to go up a higher octane level, like if you do have some knocking, it's not going to hurt anything and you can see how it performs, but you got to ask yourself, is it worth spending the extra money? So I'd like to know, after reading some of the comments, like why you guys choose what you do. So make sure you leave some comments below, and this discussion will continue. Oh, by the way, 87 octane, it's used extensively for most engines. And actually good that what I have as a scooter, as far as the ADV 150 and some of you, 87 is good to run on that, because if you're especially like an adventurous and you're riding your motorbikes to very rural or remote areas, you're not going to have a choice of 93 or ethanol, So it's good that our small little engines take 87, because in some parts of the world, in some way out areas, and you're riding your bike and you need gas, 87 is probably all you're going to find. Look, marketing has a very persuasive influence on us. So, your gas companies are going to really talk up these 89 and these 93 octanes, because why? They're going to get more money. They get more money if you buy this stuff, but you got to realize, is it worth it? And does it really benefit your engine? The only true test is to actually try it, calculate your mileage, see if it does better on fuel performance, and see if your engine is quieter. And hey, if that stuff works for you, great. Be careful with your money, because you might be just throwing it away if you really don't need to. And also be sure you understand the consequences if you do use ethanol, because again, watch out for that carbon buildup and the loss of fuel efficiency. Some people will use ethanol if they want to take a quick trip. If they're doing a lot of city driving and they want better performance or something, they'll fill up with ethanol. And then the next time, if they're planning on taking a trip to get better fuel economy, they'll go back to their regular gasoline. So people kind of mix it up and play around with it, and that's okay. Just know that what ethanol can do to an engine. And don't take my word for it. I'm just relaying what I've read. But there's forums, there's Facebook groups, all kind of reading. You could read to your blue in the face about ethanol. So get out there and do the research. If this interests you, we'll talk about more in the comments. We'll talk about it. And I want to specifically know from the folks who have left me comments under the community tab, and I'll chime back at you why you chose that. And after you saw this video, you might have a different opinion, or you may not, or you might say you're full of crap, you don't know what you're talking about, here's why. Hey, good, I'm all for it, because I like to learn. So why has ethanol been around so long and we're not using it full blown yet? Well, that gets back to that political stuff. That's where, you got your lobbyists, you got your very wealthy, rich, powerful oil industries. They don't want that ethanol mainstream. And I think that's what really limits it. That's what I'm reading anyway. The whole world, as you know, is unfortunately revolves around money, revolves around greed. And whether it's the pharmaceutical industry, whether it's the oil industry, very powerful people out there that do not want to see these alternative things come to fruition. So you got your lobbyists, and I'm not a political guy, and I don't follow that because it gets very frustrating. But I'm just saying that ethanol is probably not mainstream because of those reasons. But if there's an alternative out there that helps us have a better planet and a better environment, cleaner for our air and better for our earth, I'm all for it. You also have those people that say that all these cornfields and all the soil that's being disrupted and processed to grow corn is causing all these emissions and all this stuff that's not healthy for the environment. So that's going to take years to settle down. But I think in the long run, from what I read, is ethanol in the long run may be a better choice. But it's going to take a lot of people coming together to make it happen. So I'm not really a fan of anybody. I mean, I probably can realize the oil industry and our dependency on oil is probably not the best thing for the planet, but I'm not a scientist or a chemist, so I don't know how damaging it is to the planet either. I mean, I think anything in moderation is fine, but when you're producing oil or ethanol at very large scale, there's gonna be disruptions somewhere on the earth. So in closing, I'm gonna say, and I say it a lot, know your application. Don't go and guess. Look at your owner's manual, put the fuel in that it recommends, and chances are you're gonna live a long, healthy, happy life with that product. If there are issues with the engine and you think a higher octane might help with knocking or some other performance thing, not so much performance, but running smoother, try it, see what happens. But I don't know too many people that are constantly tearing apart their engines and monitoring the carbon buildup inside those engines. Now, a lot of your Brazilian mechanics have done that, so that's why the only negative thing that I hear about ethanol is the carbon. In closing, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, leave the comments below. We'll talk about this a little more. Make sure you give me the thumbs up if you like the content and subscribe and all that good stuff. I'd really do appreciate it. Stay tuned for next video. I got something even cooler coming up.